A powerful barrage of missiles reportedly tore across the desert skies toward eastern Jordan as Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that it had launched a direct strike against the Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base near the town of Azraq. According to the IRGC statement, the attack was carried out using a coordinated wave of ballistic missiles designed to strike the installation repeatedly and inflict maximum disruption. Iranian officials said the base was hit multiple times during the operation, with several missiles targeting different sections of the installation in rapid succession. The IRGC described the strike as part of a wider military campaign unfolding across the region. In its announcement, the organization warned that the scale and intensity of its operations would continue expanding. Iranian commanders said the strikes were only the beginning and that the volume and depth of attacks against enemy positions would grow in the coming hours and days. The message signaled that the strike on the Jordanian airbase was intended as the opening phase of a larger confrontation. Before we break down how this missile strike unfolded, how many missiles were reportedly launched, and the level of damage Iranian officials say was inflicted on the Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest dramatic geopolitical developments shaping the world. According to the IRGC's claim, the attack began with the launch of a concentrated missile salvo aimed directly at the base. Iranian military sources suggested that more than a dozen missiles were fired toward the installation in a tightly coordinated sequence. Instead of striking a single point, the missiles were reportedly aimed at multiple parts of the base simultaneously. The first wave of missiles reportedly targeted the outer operational sections of the base, where radar installations and defense equipment were positioned. Several of these missiles were said to have detonated across the perimeter of the base, sending shockwaves across the surrounding desert. Moments later, a second wave followed. According to the IRGC account, additional missiles were fired toward the core infrastructure of the installation. These missiles were reportedly aimed at aircraft operating zones and sections of the runway network. Explosions were said to have erupted across different sections of the airfield as the missiles impacted. The IRGC statement claimed that the strikes created significant damage across the base. Several impact points were reportedly identified across the airfield surface itself, where missiles struck sections of the runway and taxiways. Runway surfaces are particularly vulnerable to missile impacts. When a missile detonates on a runway, the explosion can create large craters in the pavement, throwing debris across the surface and making it unsafe for aircraft operation. According to Iranian officials, the strike created multiple large craters along the runway strip, forcing operations at the base to halt temporarily, but the runways were not the only targets. The IRGC statement claimed that several missiles struck aircraft parking zones near the runways. These areas are where fighter jets and transport aircraft are parked, refueled, and prepared for missions. Explosions in such areas can damage ground equipment, vehicles, and aircraft support infrastructure. Iranian sources suggested that at least 2 missile impacts occurred near sections where aircraft had been stationed earlier. Large fires were reportedly seen in some of these zones after the explosions. In addition to the runways and aircraft areas, the IRGC claimed that several missiles struck logistical sections of the base. These areas include buildings used for storing operational equipment, maintenance tools, and other supplies required to keep air operations running. Damage in these sections can disrupt the ability of the base to support sustained aircraft missions. One of the most significant claims made by Iranian officials involved radar equipment associated with the base. According to the IRGC statement, one of the advanced radar installations connected to the base was struck during the attack. Reports suggested that the radar system was heavily damaged, with parts of the installation reportedly destroyed by the missile impact. Radar systems are among the most valuable pieces of equipment at any airbase. They are used to monitor airspace and track aircraft movement across wide distances. According to Iranian sources, the destruction of the radar system created a temporary gap in surveillance coverage at the base. Analysts studying the situation suggested that damage to radar infrastructure could complicate monitoring operations at the installation. The IRGC statement also claimed that several maintenance buildings were damaged during the missile barrage. These structures are used to store tools and equipment required to keep aircraft operational. Missile impacts in such areas can damage vehicles, destroy stored equipment, and trigger fires that spread across the facility. According to Iranian officials, the missile strikes caused multiple fires across parts of the base. Smoke was reportedly seen rising from several impact zones. Iranian commanders described the strike as a precise and concentrated operation designed to deliver maximum disruption. They emphasized that the missiles had been aimed carefully at locations considered critical to the base's functioning. The choice of targets suggested that the operation was designed not simply to strike the base, but to interfere with its operational capability. After describing the damage inflicted during the strike, the IRGC statement turned to the broader significance of the target. Only after detailing the impacts did Iranian officials explain why Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base had been selected. According to the IRGC announcement, the base had become one of the largest operational hubs used by American fighter aircraft in the region. The statement described the installation as the largest and most active offensive base of American aggressor fighter jets. Satellite imagery released earlier had already shown a major buildup of aircraft at the base. Reports indicated that dozens of U.S. aircraft had been deployed there, including fighter jets and support planes. Some imagery showed more than 60 aircraft stationed at the base, far more than its typical number. Among the aircraft identified in satellite images were F-15 fighter jets and other combat aircraft used in strike operations. The buildup of aircraft had turned the base into a major operational hub for aerial missions across the region. This concentration of aircraft was one of the reasons Iranian officials said the base had become a priority target. By striking the installation, the IRGC sought to demonstrate that even heavily used military airfields hosting large numbers of combat aircraft could be reached by missile forces. The base itself has a long history. Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base is located near Azraq in eastern Jordan and has served as a military airfield for decades. Over time, it evolved into a major operational base, supporting fighter squadrons and international missions. In recent years, the United States had expanded its footprint there, investing millions of dollars in upgrades and infrastructure improvements to support aircraft operations. That expansion included new aircraft aprons, logistics areas, and additional facilities designed to handle larger numbers of aircraft. These upgrades turned the installation into a major hub for regional operations. Iranian officials referenced this buildup when explaining the reason for the strike. According to the IRGC statement, targeting the base was meant to challenge the infrastructure supporting American aerial operations in the region. The strike therefore carried both tactical and symbolic meaning. Tactically, the missile barrage was intended to damage runways, radar equipment, and operational facilities. Symbolically, it was meant to demonstrate the reach of Iran's missile forces. Missile warfare has become one of the defining features of modern military confrontations. Unlike traditional airstrikes that require aircraft to enter hostile airspace, missiles can be launched from long distances and reach targets within minutes. This capability allows countries to strike installations hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. Iran has invested heavily in developing this type of technology. Its arsenal includes ballistic missiles designed to travel at high speeds across long distances. Such missiles can deliver powerful warheads capable of damaging infrastructure, runways, and military facilities. By launching a coordinated barrage toward the Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base, the IRGC sought to showcase these capabilities. The strike demonstrated that long-range missile forces could target installations located far beyond Iran's borders. At the same time, the warning issued by Iranian officials suggested that the operation was not finished. The IRGC statement emphasized that further strikes could follow. It declared that the volume and depth of Iranian attacks would increase as the campaign continued. Statements like this often signal the potential for escalation. They suggest that additional military targets across the region could be drawn into the confrontation. For now, however, the focus remains on the dramatic missile strike on the Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base. The attack transformed a remote desert airfield into one of the most closely watched locations in the Middle East. Missile impacts, fires, damaged runways, and destroyed radar equipment became the center of intense global attention. The base that once quietly hosted aircraft operations suddenly found itself at the center of a regional military confrontation. And according to the IRGC statement, this strike was only the beginning of a much larger campaign unfolding across the region. As analysts and military observers continue examining reports surrounding the strike, attention remains fixed on what this attack could mean for the wider conflict unfolding across the region. The damage claimed by Iranian officials has already placed the Muwaffaq Al-Salti Air Base at the center of global strategic discussions. With runways reportedly scarred by missile impacts, radar systems damaged, and operational areas hit, the strike has transformed what was once a quiet desert installation into a symbol of the rapidly escalating confrontation. If the warnings issued by the IRGC about expanding attacks prove accurate, the events at Azraq may represent only the opening chapter of a much larger and more intense phase of military operations spreading across the Middle East.